the second annual HPC AI Advisory Council Australia Conference. My name is Brian Sparks, and I'm the Director of Worldwide Operations for the Council, and will be today's moderator. I'd like to take a quick moment to thank everyone at NCI for their partnership and support of this conference, and for helping with the Council's mission and learning objectives. I'd also like to thank our media partners, Gabriel Consulting, HPC Wire, Inside HPC, Intersect 360, and the Next Platform for their ongoing coverage of the Council's worldwide conferences and activities. Obviously, we would have loved to do this conference in person as we previously intended, but we're happy to be able to bring this to you live over the web. During these times, we hope everyone is safe and continue to remain healthy. We have a robust agenda for the next 3.5 hours with great topics and speakers, including a live walkthrough of the NCI Supercomputing Center. I encourage everyone to ask questions via the Q&A window, and our presenters will try to answer them after their presentation. This webinar is being recorded, and the sessions will be made publicly available. All slides will be available on the Council's conference website over the coming days. With that, let me introduce you all to Gilad Shainer, Chairman of the HPC Advisory Council. Gilad, you have the floor.
Thank you, Brian. So good morning everyone, or good morning to from where you are. I'm Gilad, and I helped to manage the HPC AI Advisory Council from inception in 2008. So 12 years ago. We're happy to co-host the HPC AI Advisory Council Australia Conference 2020 together with NCI Australia. And we greatly appreciate the support and help from NCI to make this digital conference happen, and to help with bringing great content in the next today and tomorrow. A little bit about the council itself. Established in 2008, it's a worldwide non-profit organization that includes more than 400 member companies, universities, government labs, research centers, everything from the world of high-performance computing or the world of supercomputing. The mission of the Council is to bridge the gap between capabilities and usage, to help bring more knowledge on high-performance computing technologies, on the next generations of capabilities, to create interactions between people that can use the technology for developing new products, to conducting new research, and so forth. The Council is doing multiple activities, or manage multiple activities around the world, and I'll touch on some of those activities. Before that, my primary job within the HPC AI Advisory Council is to put all of the logos of all of the members on one slide. I think I managed to do it quite nicely over the years. We still have some white space here, and for anyone that is not a member of the HPC AI Advisory Council, I do encourage you to join. There is no fees to join the Council. The Council is operating based on people that volunteer their time or companies that sponsor some of the activities. So at first, there is no fees to join, and you can determine how much you would like to contribute to the community from the HPC Council perspective. And if you want to join, just go on the HPC AI Advisory Council website, the member tab, and there is simple information on how to join. This year was an interesting year. We typically host multiple physical conferences around the world. This year, most of the activities becomes digital in one day. So first, on some of the things that the Council is doing, we publish a lot of best practices. One of the main things that we are focusing on is to review different kind of technologies, if this is a compute-based, a networking-based, a storage-based, be able to run different kind of applications, different kind of simulations, and then to produce best practices that reviews the impact on the different hardware elements, versus the software elements, if those are compilers, libraries, and so forth. Provide information on the way that application work, to profile them, to give insight on how one can optimize performance or optimize productivity for different kind of applications on different kind of hardware resources. We have published hundred of cases to date, and we continue to provide that and see that as a great service to the community. We also host a small cluster and advanced technology center physically it's in California, where we conduct our best practices on, but we also give free access to people that wants to run their own simulations, their own benchmarking, do their own development, and they don't have access to compute resources, or they don't have access to a specific compute resources. So we're happy to provide the free access. All the information is on the website, so you can see the compute resources and how to ask for an access. We conduct multiple conferences around the world. This year, those conferences become virtual to the most. So we hosted the conference together with Stanford early this year. We're happy to collaborate and work together with NCI. We appreciate the support of NCI to host the Australian conference, which we're doing today and tomorrow. And we have a few more conferences later this year. We're also managing several university-based competitions that are targeted to bring HPC and AI knowledge into universities, into the curriculum, into the elements that the student can learn and then compete against. Those competitions enable students to get experience on building high-performance computing infrastructure, on running simulations, on solving problems. And it's a great experience they can take to their university, to their future research, or to the future career. The Cluster Center, again, it's something that we provide as a free resource. And we appreciate the contribution of the different council members for creating the center, donating hardware equipment. Some of that hardware, part of that hardware can get into the council before it actually go to production in the market. So people can get even pre-access to technology in order to start doing their own testing and development. So that's a great resource, and we do encourage anyone that requires or wants to do testing or development of any sort and requires some compute resources to look on what we have and to ask for remote access if needed. We also have a great community, the HPC Works Community, that gives information on how to build a cluster, how to operate, how to tune it, how to make sure things are running. And that can be from basic things all the way to very sophisticated elements. We continue to grow the information there, and it includes a very rich database. So I do encourage you also to take a look. And if you have any questions regarding building or usage, feel free to submit that to the community. I mentioned hundreds of best practices published, and this is a good list of the different kind of applications that we have best practices on. Per application, you will be able to find best practices on different kind of compute infrastructures, different kind of software infrastructures, and so forth. We do profiling of those applications. We look into ways to increase productivity, not just to increase the performance, but also to increase the productivity. and compare different kind of tuning elements to help our community to improve their performance on their own systems. And everything is posted on the website. Conferences, as I mentioned before, this year we went into virtual conferences. The picture on the left, the top left, is from our latest virtual conference that we've done together with the Stanford University. The rest are pictures of previous physical conferences that we have conducted and managed. And I do hope that next year we'll be able to go back and host some of those physical conferences and not just virtual. From the competition perspective, we are managing 3 competitions a year. It's not a simple task, but this is something that we feel that it's very important. And we see how this experience and the extra knowledge helps students with their future career, either to become a top-notch researchers or to lead technology development in different kind of commercial companies. This year we have partnered with the National Supercomputing Center in Singapore to continue and run those competitions. So if in previous years those competitions were done physically, where university teams actually build their own infrastructure and took it, or small infrastructure and took it to one place like ISC in Germany and compete there. This year, because of we're not doing physical events, we appreciated the support, the great support from the National Supercomputing in Singapore to give access to their own supercomputer, so we can continue run those competitions and have the student teams go and access the supercomputer in Singapore as part of the competition. You can see some of the pictures, happy students, and we are again greatly appreciate the support of NCEA Singapore to help continue with this important activity. This year, we also dedicated the competitions to the global fight against COVID-19. So the students competed on running bioscience applications that are being used to do research and find drugs or medicines for COVID-19. So the student actually helped with the global fight. And again, it's all because of the generous donation from Singapore. Last and not least, we also publish the Student Cluster Competition Leadership List. It's a list that ranks universities according to their participation in the worldwide competitions and how well they did. We have a worldwide list that includes tens of universities and also a list that cover the different kind of territories. We're happy to see very strong universities that continue to participate year after year, and we're also welcoming new universities into the list. If you want to look at the list, you can do that as well on the HPC Advisory Council website. So with that, I do welcome you. We'll have 2 short days. We are bringing great content from that covers the technologies, that covers the usage of that technologies, and bringing also view to the future and what people are working on. So one, I'd like to again thank NCI Australia for the great partnership, and I hope that the Australia Conference 2021 will be physically in Australia. I'd like to welcome you, and I hope that you enjoyed the great content. And I want to thank the speakers for today and tomorrow that participate and help to bring great content to the conference.
Great. Thank you, Gilad. Now to formally open our conference is Dr. Sean Smith, Director of NCI Australia, and Professor of Computational Nanomaterials Science and Technology at the Australian National University. Dr. Smith has extensive theoretical and computational research experience in chemistry, nanomaterials, and nanobioscience and technology. He returned to Australia in 2014 at UNSW Sydney, founding and directing the Integrated Material Design Center to drive an integrated program of materials, design, discovery, and characterization. Prior to this, he directed the U.S. Department of Energy-funded Center for Nanophase Material Sciences at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, one of 5 major DOE nanoscience research and user facilities in the U.S. Dr. Smith, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks very much, Brian and Gilad. It's a great pleasure to, from down here in Canberra, open the meeting as a virtual conference as it were in Canberra. So welcome everybody, virtually shall we say, to Australia. It's a great pleasure to have you joining us for this meeting, and we hope and I'm quite sure it'll be a resounding success thanks to the very efficient and professional organisational efforts of the Advisory Council. Okay, then also before I start, as is traditional down here in Australia when we have a public meeting, we would like to acknowledge the first Australians on whose traditional lands we meet and pay respects to their elders past and present. Good, so once again, welcome. We're based here in Australia. NCI Australia is one of Australia's 2 Tier 1 peak high-performance compute and data facilities. On the left-hand side of the opening screen there, you see the very new supercomputer which we have just installed. It launched it about 8 months ago, right at the start of the year, in its full phase, Gaudi. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that as we go on. Let me then start with an introduction. Okay, that's good. It's a little bit laggy with the arrow key here. Okay, so as I indicated, NCI Australia is one of our 2 Tier 1 facilities down under. We look after high-performance computing with what is currently the fastest research supercomputer down under. We look after large-scale data services, storage, and management as well. And we also are progressively building out significant interfacial cloud services for our systems here. Our mission is to provide world-class, high-performance advanced computing services for Australian researchers. We are driven by achieving research outcomes together with our client researchers who access our systems. We enable research that informs policy, and as you would all have seen early this year, Australia was inundated with smoke from bushfires. And this kind of crisis response research is driven heavily on our systems through our close engagement with our partners in climate and weather modelling. And likewise, things like COVID-19 response we've also been engaged in. I'll touch on a little bit later. And we deliver outcomes with the national benefit firmly in mind. Just to give you a little sense of how our system for HPC works down under, NCI, in terms of its major upgrades, is funded by line item budget in the Australian government budget. And most recently, the funding for our supercomputer upgrade was dropped at the end of 2017. We then undertook an accelerated procurement process and launched the new machine at the start of this year. So it was 2 years from the money dropping to actually firing up the big machine, which is pretty quick on procurement timelines internationally. I like to say it's a little bit like elections in Australia. They're much faster than corresponding exercise in the US, shall we say. NCRIS is an acronym for the federal government's National Collaborative Research Infrastructure Scheme, and it funds all different flavours of research infrastructure in Australia, including the high-performance computing activities. I did indicate that major upgrades are funded on the federal budget. However, our operational expenses are about 25% funded by the federal input, and the remainder is funded by a large grouping of collaborating organisations who invest collaboratively and have access to our facilities in response to that. We have 4 major, what we call foundation collaborators. It's the Australian National University, and it's the campus of the ANU here in Canberra that we're residing on. And then 3 government agencies, the Bureau of Meteorology, the CSIRO, which is effectively our national laboratory here in Australia, and Geoscience Australia, with which we do all of our geospatial modelling and satellite data hosting. And then, as you can see down below, a whole host of different universities that invest and collaborate on our facilities, as well as indeed some commercial partners that we've engaged with over some time. A quick scope of the types of research that we facilitate. It's basically everything. And so both NCI and its sister Tier 1 facility, the Pawsey Supercomputing Centre in West Australia in Perth, service the broad research sector. So if you will, here in Australia, we're a little bit like a hybrid of your Tier 1 facilities in the States and your nodes, as it were, who service the more general university research community. And you can see large chunks of allocation institutionally go to these major collaborator organizations who invest with us, as well as a significant amount going out into merit access. Approximately 25% of our capacity is fully subsidized and is offered essentially without cost to the user based on merit access out of the research, out of the university sector. And you can see all of the traditional players here in terms of disciplines that access us. Maybe a little different from what you might see in some of the international organizations. You see a very large chunk here in Earth and System Sciences. And that's both in part the large component of climate and weather modeling that we host. But we also do, as I'll touch on a little bit later, an enormous amount of work on hosting geospatial satellite imaging data sets. Okay, I did promise you a few words on the new supercomputer. Gaudi comes in at just under 150,000 cores, nearly 600 terabytes of memory. It's a heterogeneous system with nearly 650 NVIDIA V1000 GPUs. And that heterogeneity in our system is quite deliberate because of the fact, as I mentioned, that we service a very wide range of research requirements from across the sector. So we've got to have that heterogeneous capability. To summarize a few of the things that we've done since Gaudi came on deck early in the year, we wanted to thrash the machine really hard at the start to uncover any bugs and stress test it essentially. And so we ran an early phase invitation-only scheme called Stress 2020, which had input from a range of our heavy-hitting compute-intensive groups across the country, basically running their applications as hard as they could to iron out any bugs in the system, which is already, as a side effect aside of the testing per se, is producing some really exciting scientific results as well. We also did something else a little different with the new machine coming on. Our previous facility was maxed out completely and we didn't have much leeway to do this. But we have moved towards a system now where we have scope in our facility for significantly larger compute grants than would normally have been the case previously. And so you can see here we've awarded competitively large-scale merit projects on the order of 50-some-odd million each SUs on our system. And that's the bluish ones in the top 4. And then the one below that, the purple ones, was a rapid response that we did to accelerate research in response to COVID-19, looking for drugs basically to treat that disease. And those projects are all in full flight currently as we speak. So it's allowed us not only to service the broad spectrum of university research, but also do some special things. And we see results coming out that are quite exciting. We could never have done without this facility previously, and that will accelerate in the coming months. So as I indicated, our agenda here is to provide world-class computational capabilities. It's allowing us to simulate both much larger molecular systems on the order of many hundreds of thousands of atoms reaching into millions, to allow us to do climate event simulations, which drill down to on the order of 1 to 400 meter resolution, which we could never go close to previously, and to do rapid response on issues such as we're all dealing with, as Gilad mentioned a little bit earlier, in response to COVID-19 activities. So in NCI, it isn't really just about HPC, it's also about HPD. And we've been led down this pathway through our deep dive collaborations over a decade now with Geoscience Australia, the CSIRO, and the Bureau of Meteorology because of these huge climate and weather data sets. And we also host pretty much all of the geospatial satellite imaging data sets for our part of the globe are hosted for collaborative sandpit collaboration access here at the NCI. Which allows the different agencies and the entire university sector, and more broadly the public, to be able to access and utilize the data. And we work on analysis platforms which can hit the data super fast and run the analytics on site, and then feed the results back to people's desktops. And so we've carved out a bit of a reputation for being pretty good at doing that, I should say. Okay, and this is the last slide, so hopefully we're more or less on time. Yeah, pretty much. I'll just run it real quick because it's an example of, we have a very good, I should say, scientific 3D visualization team who work on all of these large compute simulations and visualize them. I'll hit the button and we can see this as a part to finish off the talk. Hope it goes okay. So this is a particular weather event which occurred in the middle of 2016 off the east coast of Australia, an extreme low, which turned into some pretty heavy storm weather. And you can see they can map many different facets of it, the cloud movement, the precipitation, the moisture, the humidity, and learn things that we couldn't otherwise have done if we didn't have really good visualization to help analyze the data. And these are a few different visualizations of different types of data that you can extract from these huge weather and climate simulations. This one is precipitation going through that same time period. Most recently in the Stress 2020 call, our weather modelers did simulation down to, I think it was 100 meter resolution of a hurricane which hit northeastern Australia 2 or 3 years back, which has been also quite exciting to see the visualizations emerge. Okay, look, I think we'll stop it there because I don't want to run out of time. So if I can stop sharing. All right, and I think we're back over to the MC. Thanks, everybody.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Smith, and thank you again for all of NCI's support of this conference.
You're very welcome.